When people talk about quick commerce and business not being sustainable, unit economics tested, whether business sustain or sustain, I'm a firm believer the future is very bright.
That's Karan Torani of Elara Capital. And in this episode of The Spotlight, we're discussing Swiggy, a company that has fundamentally changed the daily lives of Indians.
Restaurant commission for a new restaurant was around 18-20% until about 3 to 5 years back. Today it stands at 28-30%. In the quick commerce business, the customer acquisition is only going to increase from here on because you're seeing so much of fierce competition.
Swiggy and its competitors are fighting tooth and nail to dominate in the delivery and quick commerce markets. From batteries to bananas and t-shirts to tiramisu, these companies are increasingly influencing how products are bought and sold in India, and in many ways may determine the winners in the battle for the Indian consumer. Thank you for joining us as we turn the spotlight on Swiggy. As always, nothing in this video is investment advice, nor a recommendation to or not to buy, sell, or hold any security. We're happy to partner with the Zero On Media Network to bring you useful and interesting insights and information from the world of business and investing. So go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Hi, Karan. Welcome to the Spotlight. I'm really excited about this conversation because it's really amazed me how quickly Swiggy and companies like it have integrated themselves into our daily lives. It's astonishing to see how large these companies have become in such a short period of time. Can you explain just how large they've become and some of the history of the companies that you think point to the reasons that have enabled them to become so big?
So, hi, Krish. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast. Indeed, these companies have become phenomenally large. We've seen two big trends in terms of why internet businesses have evolved in a market like India. One, of course, was the launch of 4G, right, in 2016 at affordable prices. That led to increased smartphone penetration, changed the demographics completely. People wanted to spend more time on phone. And then came the pandemic, wherein again, people were forced to stay indoors. Things actually moved from offline to online in a very big manner. I think these two things have actually triggered the, exponential growth of the platform. If you look at the online food market, it's about $10 to $12 billion today. It's like a reasonable size market. And this is growing at about 15-20% on a CAGR basis. So there's still ample opportunity for this to scale up. But the food business somewhere seems to be in a mature state right now. We may not see growth rates accelerating beyond this point because we already reasonably penetrated in terms of number of cities and number of states and markets put together. Some tier 3, tier 4 markets may be added, but as I said, 15-20% is what you can expect in terms of GOV for the food segment. Another interesting piece that both these companies have gone into over the last 2.5 years is the quick commerce business. Now, here is the big opportunity. I think 2 years back, even I was not confident that the quick commerce business will actually take off. In a market like India, where you've got so many kirana stores, we've got almost about 15 million kirana stores today, pan-India basis. And I don't think people would want to order this kind of kirana stuff or grocery stuff online. But just look at the behavior. The consumer patterns have changed, the consumption patterns, the behavior has changed. I think it's all the Gen Z who's driving this consumption, wherein they actually want convenience. They want to actually save time. There is a lot of impulse buying happening in certain categories. And look at the opportunity in quick commerce. I think e-commerce companies are coming into quick commerce. And that just goes to show the entire opportunity quick commerce is going to have over the mid long-term perspective. I think India's e-commerce market is about $140-150 billion as a market size. I think quick commerce is just scratching the surface. So we are at about $5 to $6 billion market size today, growing at 50 to 60% annually CAGR over the next 3 to 4 years. And with e-commerce players coming in, this market is going to become even more competitive and even more fierce. So I think quick commerce is got a very bright future over the next 5 years. But the food will be more of a cash cow and a stable business with stable profitability as of now.
If we club the different verticals in the company into 3 buckets, basically there's food delivery, there's quick commerce, and then if I think of everything else as one bucket, Genie, Scenes, which is the live events. So what I really want to do is understand the competitive dynamics of the space and how a company like Swiggy stands out from competition when it seems like it's so hard to actually do that. So if you look at the 2 major buckets, which is quick commerce and food delivery, Do you believe that Swiggy can actually stand out from competition? You know all those financial services ads where at the end they quickly mumble, investing is subject to market risks. Please read the offer document carefully before investing. At my first job, it was actually my role to read the fine print on all those documents. What I learned from that experience was that when it comes to financial products, the reality of what you're buying may be very different from what you're being sold. In recent times, I've had the same experience with insurance, where when you go to make a claim, you suddenly find out that it's been rejected on some technicality. The point is, it's absolutely essential to be very clear about what you're getting when you buy insurance. And that's why we're partnering with Ditto Insurance to simplify your insurance experience. Unless you enjoy reading hundreds of pages of fine print, you're better off consulting experts who deal with insurance day in and day out, like the experts at Ditto. Use the link in the description to schedule a free consultation to get expert guidance to help you with your insurance needs. Ditto helps you purchase the best insurance plan for you by simplifying your experience both before and after buying insurance. Talking to the experts is a great way to have all your questions answered and understand the important details relating to different insurance options, including things like what exactly a particular insurance plan covers. You can even discuss your existing plans to understand your coverage and other details. Their experts assist you not only in choosing the right insurance plan, but also with documentation and claim settlements. And the good news is they do all this with a zero spam policy. Shout out to the folks at Ditto Insurance. If you're looking for a spam free platform to buy insurance, schedule a free call or chat with Ditto using the link in the description.
Swiggy started the food business. Zomato got into it much later after restaurant discovery. But today, fortunately or unfortunately, Zomato is the market leader and they are ahead of Swiggy. I mean, they've got 15 to 20% higher market share in terms of percentage as compared to what Swiggy would have today. We are in a duopoly market. So in terms of the competitive intensity, the external factors, if I can give you the food business first, 3 to 5 years back, we had too many players. We had Uber, we had Food Panda, we had some other Scootseek, smaller players which were there, which were eventually kind of taken over by these players. But as I see right now, I think this duopoly will sustain for the next 5 to 10 years. So two reasons in terms of why the competitive intensity in the food business will not increase from here on. One, of course, is the growth rates have kind of converged very sharply. Okay. Right. So food business was growing at 25-30% GOV, even more than that until about 3 years ago. Today it has come to 15-20%, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, I think to get the entire moat to build the ecosystem, to basically have an end-to-end control, like for example, right from the restaurant partner to the delivery to the technology, having an end-to-end control is something which builds over years. It's like a big challenge. So I don't see any other company kind of coming and trying to execute this. We've had the likes of direct ordering platforms, Thrive, BroadPay coming into this with the support of NRAI, which is National Restaurant Association of India. But I think they failed miserably, right? Because the dependence was on third-party food delivery. We've had ONGC also come in. We've had Ola Foods. We've had other small Tata Foods kind of players who wanted to do this kind of a thing. But whatever traction ONDC is seeing, it is seeing at the cost of discounting. And again, there is no last mile control. So unless you don't have last mile control, your experiences becomes poor, your lead times become higher. So food business is kind of complicated now. And we don't see new players coming into this space right now. That's the external part. As far as Swiggy's mode goes, versus Zomato, if you look at the metrics, I think the metrics are largely in line with Zomato. So whether you look at the AOV, you look at the take rate, I think on take rate front, they are slightly higher as compared to what a Zomato would be because of their, kind of their spread being slightly wider in terms of the non-metro markets and the smaller markets and having, more smaller restaurants, more number of smaller restaurants as such. So take rates are slightly higher basis that, but there is no such mode which works as an advantage for Swiggy. I would really place that both of them are at par. One thing where Swiggy can actually kind of make an effort to improvise is ad revenue. So if you look at the margins of Swiggy versus Zomato, of course, there's a difference of 25-30% on scale of the food business, which is why the margins for, Swiggy today on the food side are about 200 bips lower as compared to what in Zomato would be, 250 bips lower. This gap will converge basis scale as how Swiggy grows and how the business scales up for the food business side. Second big reason is also the ad revenue. So I think on advertising revenue front, what we believe is that Zomato has got a higher advertising revenue as compared to what Swiggy would have. This is primarily because of, whatever they have done in terms of execution. I think they were the first ones to get the data right, to kind of tie up with the restaurant partners. And, one more very big factor to drive ad revenue in this business is the fragmentation of the market. So if you look at global food markets, almost about 70 to 80% is driven by the chains, right?
Right.
Now, these chains have got a better bargaining power because there are few like 10, 12 chains which will have, 70, 80% of the number of restaurants. But in the case of India market, the chain market or the organized market is very small. The unorganized market is relatively larger. So the bargaining power rests in favor of the food businesses. So I think food businesses does have scope for future margin improvement. Swiggy will need to execute better on these parameters, whether you call it the advertising revenue or getting the customer data, or, having the platform fee, because platform fee was started by Zomato and then Swiggy did a piggyback. But yes, Swiggy has also been better versus Zomato, or rather been more innovative versus Zomato in many cases. Like they started this entire snack category wherein you were able to get quicker delivery within 10 to 15 minutes, and Zomato started later. So as far as innovation goes, yes, Swiggy in certain aspects, certain areas has been ahead of Zomato. But as far as execution goes, Zomato kind of becomes better over a period of time versus Swiggy. That's the food business part.
Right. And my sense is that in this business, execution is more important than innovation anyway. So let's look at the food delivery business. There's been a lot of talk over the years about the commission that Swiggy takes and whether those commissions have essentially become prohibitive to the point where it's impossible for those restaurants to have sustainable businesses. If they continue down that path where the larger companies get favorable terms compared to the smaller companies, the smaller restaurants, then over time, aren't companies like Swiggy essentially creating people on the other side of the table who will have more bargaining power to the point where ultimately they will be able to dominate Swiggy? Do you think that is ever a possibility?
So that can become a possibility, but I think we're still 7 to 8 years away from that kind of a situation. India, in terms of food market, you have got the organized, unorganized, chain market and the non-chain market. So within the organized market, the chain market is a very small number. You can see that 25% of the market is led by chain and the larger organized players which have got multiple restaurants. More than 70, 80% is led by standalone restaurants, right, with smaller chains which are there. So I think they have got limited bargaining power as of now. Now, let's say in the next 5 to 8 years, these smaller chains actually become large. So, for example, today, if you look at, the likes of homegrown chains, like, for example, if you look at Falafel, if you look at Behrouz Biryani, if you look at Charcoal Eats, if you look at the likes of Wow Momos, right? Some of them have scaled up. Some of them have got 300, 400 outlets, But the point is, like La Pino's Pizza, the point is, will they be able to sustain these number of outlets? Will they be able to grow these number of outlets? That is the one thing to be watched upon for, because most of these outlets which are made are franchise-based outlets. Now, what happens in case of franchise-based outlets? You might see a situation wherein for 3-4 years at a stretch, you end up expanding aggressively. But because the economics are not suited, because the experience is not correct, the franchise outlets even shut down. So can this business model of franchise-based outlets sustain? Can you have, let's say, 5 or 8 players in India which are even larger as compared to a Domino's Pizza or a KFC or a McDonald's? Right? That is something to watch out for. That's the first thing. Second thing is about the standalone restaurants, right? Can the number of standalone restaurants come down because of increased competitive intensity? So let's say these chains actually emerge very big across various categories, number of standalone restaurants come down. So if these two scenarios emerge, wherein local homegrown chains actually scale up and the standalone restaurants come down, that is when the bargaining power can shift slightly in favor of the restaurant partners. But I think that is still a 5 to 8 year scenario. Plus, execution has to happen, like either from the chain restaurants to scale up, or favorably the standalone restaurants should shut down. That number should actually come down, which I don't think in a market like India will happen, because India is a very complex market. But I don't see consolidation really playing out. I don't see take rates coming down. Again, I'm not a believer of take rates going up exponentially. I think take rates will remain where they are. So because eventually the chain market will grow faster as compared to standalone market, we may not see increased take rates from here on. So for example, take rates, we look at the numbers, like for example, restaurant commission for a new restaurant. was around 18-20% until about 3 to 5 years back. Today it stands at 28-30%, including GST. So that has come up exponentially. Now, this exponential growth will not happen further. I think it will remain stable, maybe 100 to 200 bips higher over the next 1 to 2 years is something what they'll focus upon, because even for the food tech companies now, restaurant commission is not a very big margin lever. Okay. Yeah, adopted to other margin levers, which is advertising revenue, platform fee, delivery fee, loyalty program revenue, all these things put together. So I think they was realized that somewhere beyond the point they can't charge restaurants, commissions beyond the point. In fact, India as a market, you've got the highest commission rates. If you look at the global countries, if you look at developed markets, commission rates are as low as 12 to 13%. The highest number I would call it. India is at 20% plus in terms of restaurant commission. So very clearly, I think we are already at that level of restaurant commission. And I think even the food tech companies would go for other levers and restaurant commission.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I think as far as the food delivery business is concerned, it's sometimes underappreciated just how many different ways Swiggy makes money, right? It's not just a commission they take every time I order something from a restaurant. So can you talk about how the different ways in which Swiggy makes money every time somebody places an order, plus the money they make from the restaurant vendors themselves, in terms of advertisements and so on the platform?
So we actually don't have segregation of how much ad revenue, how much delivery fee, how much platform fee they make. But yes, there is a segregation in terms of, the general commission rate, which includes ad revenue and platform fee and delivery. That those two things are,
So the 30% rate that you mentioned combines it includes all of this.
So if I'm talking about, say, the 27%, I think the 27% commission rate, what Zomato or Swiggy would make today, roughly in that range, does have delivery charges, which is around 7 to 8% of the AOV, or the GOV rather. And the balance 20% is basically a mix of platform fee, ad revenue, and restaurant commission.
Right.
So, the restaurant commission rate would vary. What I spoke about, the 28%, that would be the restaurant commission for the new restaurants. Right. But if you look at the mature restaurants, the larger chains, the restaurant commissions go as low as 15 to 16%. So on an average, you can say that this is primarily, our analysis. About 15 to 16% would be the restaurant commission. Around 4 to 6% would be the platform fee and ad revenue, and the balance 6 to 8% is the delivery charge. This is a breakup of the 28% number on an average in terms of take rates, including delivery, what they make.
If you're saying 6 to 8% is delivery charge, is that a potential lever from Swiggy's viewpoint, where as they scale, as they become increasingly efficient incrementally, their logistics cost keeps going down on average?
So I don't think delivery fee is a lever. Okay, two reasons for that. One is, I think most of these companies or platforms rather are trying to drive more frequency. They are focusing on loyalty programs, which means giving delivery free, right? Because in terms of the mix of the growth, earlier they were focused in terms of new customer growth and, growth which is lower profitability in nature, right? Basically, if you have a new customer, there's a cost of customer acquisition. The customer may not come to your platform frequently. You have to spend on promotions to, really drive the customer in terms of more orders or more traffic. But they're trying to focus on frequency. So I think delivery charges that way will actually come down. In terms of revenue for them, delivery revenue rather. Because clearly, as of now, they are trying to focus on frequency. That's the first thing. The second thing is that eventually, even in terms of delivery cost, you are going to see pressure for them. Because if you look at the delivery cost in terms of breakup, 80% is manpower cost and 20% is fuel cost. So let's say tomorrow fuel costs come down because of use of EV and, crude coming off globally. Even then the delivery cost doesn't change, in a very big manner. So I think the delivery charges would remain in a similar band. I don't see that being a big margin lever. The big margin levers today is not restaurant commission, not delivery revenue, but platform fee and ad revenue. Margin lever.
Yeah, it's interesting, the platform fee. So I was seeing in the last year, every time I order on Swiggy, the platform fee, I think it's about a year back, it was, obviously in absolute numbers, it's not relevant, but in percentage terms, I think it's gone from like 3 rupees to like 9 rupees or something. So in percentage terms, it's an incredible gain. So I imagine over time that only goes up and up. But, I just want to ask one more question on food delivery, because what I really want to talk about is quick commerce, which is in many ways a more interesting component. But as far as food delivery is concerned, Can you talk to me about Swiggy's execution over time, how you view their execution capabilities, and what do you think, as far as execution is concerned, they've got particularly right, and where do you think there is room for improvement?
So, firstly, on the platform fee part, I'll just spend like 1 minute on that.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful metric to drive profitability. What it does is that it basically leads to a very big positive impact on your overall profitability and EBITDA, and doesn't even pinch the customer. So you can actually test markets, you can actually test the customer, and then increase the platform fee gradually based on acceptance, so that your order volume is not negatively impacted. So I think platform fee can even go to 15-20 rupees.
Yeah.
And it can actually offset the negative impact of free delivery, what these guys are doing right now. In fact, globally, if you look at the food tech businesses, they are also charging a premium fee for a faster delivery. Priority delivery, so to say.
Yeah.
So that model can also come into India, which is another handed lever, which is there if a customer wants the food quickly.
They've done this in an ulta way, right? Where I see it now, where it says if you want the delivery, say in 25 minutes, but if you're willing to take it in 35 minutes, you get $5 off the next order. So they've, in a sense, done it already.
But that eventually happens. So my point is that, see, today, because of quick commerce, consumers have become impulsive. They also want to have food within 10 to 15 minutes. Obviously, having food in 15 minutes, which needs to be prepared, is not practically possible. But yes, ready-made food like croissants, sandwiches, coffee, certain categories of food can be delivered within 15 minutes, right? And the problem is our mindset, right? So the thing is that once a customer is said that, you're going to deliver this food in 15 minutes, even if you deliver within 25 minutes, the customer is happy because the experience is much better as compared to what it was earlier.
Yeah.
The experience was 40-45 minutes, right? So eventually the entire army will kind of move towards it. Like if you look at the data, if you look at the Swiggy as a platform, if you look at delivery boys, all of them will work together for delivering the food within 15 minutes, which eventually happen 25 minutes, but experience improves.
Right.
So there's ample scope for experience to improve in the food business, which will drive higher frequency on the customer side. Your question in terms of the competitive advantage or the moat that Swiggy has got, as I said, they do not have ample number of moats versus Zomato on the food side as of now. As I said, on innovation side, they have been top notch. They've been much better as compared to what Zomato will be doing. But on the execution side, there are still ways in terms of how they can improve going ahead. And we just hope that whether it is ad revenue, whether it is platform fee, whether it is some innovation like snack, or maybe charging premium delivery, these are areas in terms of where they can basically improve.
It's amazing to me how these companies, and we'll talk about Swiggy in particular, manage the quick commerce side of the business. It seems like magic to me that they can deliver these random assortment of products anywhere in a city in 10 to 15 minutes. How the hell do they do it?
So quick commerce, as I said, the entire business proposition started wherein it was actually limited to certain categories, which are impulse buying in nature, right? The entire data around that, the entire intelligence around that, the dark store mechanism, the delivery boys, I think everything kind of comes together if you want to execute well in quick commerce. Now, how do they do that? I think that's a secret sauce which only they can share, but I can give you some insights over there. I think what they do is they study consumer behavior, right? They go very deep in terms of micro markets. So for example, in the case of e-commerce, what happens in the case of e-commerce, right? You want to order some e-commerce is like a wide variety of offering. There is no limitation in terms of assortments. Okay, you have got a huge range of assortment. Whatever you want, you will get, right? And the assortments will be similar on a pan-India basis. So somebody sitting, in a South Bombay versus a South Delhi will have a same assortment as far as e-commerce is concerned. Now, quick commerce is all about, as I said, studying markets, studying micro markets, studying consumer behavior, and then placing your assortments basis that, right? So I think quick commerce is more of an intelligence game wherein you have to actually study the customer and the assortment and place your assortments basis that. For example, let's say a Coke in South Bombay would see very high demand, right? But some other soft drink or something else would see a high demand in South Delhi. So they study consumer behavior, they study the micro markets, and then kind of play with us. It's like a reverse thing. It's not like about giving all the assortments to the customer and let the customer come and let them choose what they want. No, they kind of go micro market and make sure the customer gets what they want, right time, right place. That is all about quick commerce. So I think quick commerce is fairly complicated because of this thing in terms of customer and data intelligence, what they have. Second thing why it's complicated is in terms of the lead time. Right? So just imagine if you have to deliver a product within 10 to 15 minutes, you actually need to have a store which is strategically right in terms of location. That's the biggest point in quick commerce if you want to achieve success. Again, the same thing, study the market, study the residential areas over there, study the consumer behavior, study what people order, and then have the store, then have the assortment. And that's when you can execute, right? So I think they've got this entire thing right. I think e-commerce players are also coming into this game right now, but e-commerce business is very different as compared to quick commerce. The DNA is extremely different. So even for a Swiggy or a Blinkit or any quick commerce company, I think you have to give it to them that yes, there is some secret sauce in terms of how they are able to execute so well on all parameters, right from the assortment to the delivery.
Yeah. What's very interesting to me when you look at quick commerce versus food delivery for Swiggy, it's interesting that in food delivery, it's a duopoly, but in quick commerce, there's a very large third player as well. If we look at Swiggy's numbers in these two businesses, can we see how the competitive dynamics are different for the two businesses?
What you saw in the food business, right? The food business kind of took off one way. Growth rates were at 35-40% plus on GOV. And then because, once you penetrate your number of customers, you reach a respectable scale. Once you penetrate your number of restaurants in terms of tie-ups, you plateau.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in terms of growth, very typical. Quick commerce is a very different proportion altogether. I think quick commerce actually pinched e-commerce.
Okay.
Right? So it's not only the three players that we have right now. We also have Big Basket, which is a fourth player. Apparently, Big Basket was one of the first ones, or rather the first few ones, which started this entire grocery delivery online. Right? We've seen Amazon doing started delivery 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Right? So quick commerce is the innovation, I believe. Right? And we've got more players coming into this now. JioMart is starting 30-minute delivery. We've seen, Big Basket, starting having quick commerce operations as well. So many logistics companies are coming into quick commerce. So I think quick commerce for the next couple of years, and now obviously we've got Amazon, we've got Flipkart Minutes, Amazon Pays, right? So the point is, this fragmentation will continue at least for the next 2 years, right? And this will actually test the market in terms of who are the winners and who are the losers. Something similar to what happened in the food business, right? In the food business, as I said, the consolidation came within 2 years because things moved here and then things kind of plateaued. But because opportunity was limited, you eventually have just, same number of restaurants and, same AOV and same number of customers. And beyond the point, you can't scale up. Here, the opportunity is huge. I mean, a quick commerce market today, let's say, is, 1/3 or half of the food market, right? But the quick commerce business or the quick commerce market can actually become 2x or 3x of the food business over the next 5 years. That's the kind of potential this market has got. And again, we are only in the top 8, 10, 12 cities right now, which is driving 80-90% of GOV. They're not even going to the non-metro market. So just imagine the opportunity in terms of moving from metro to non-metro. Imagine the opportunity in terms of moving from FMCG grocery vertical to other verticals. So the opportunity is phenomenally large here. So the fragmentation in the quick commerce business will stay longer, but not only for 12 to 18 months. That's the first thing. It might stay longer than that. And the second thing is that quick commerce business will have coexistence of at least 3 to 4 players. Given the kind of opportunity size that we have, quick commerce may never be a duopoly. Okay, it will have at least 4 players because we've got so many categories, so many different markets. All of them can become experts in their own way, in their own niche manner. So that is how I see the market evolving.
And how do you view Instamart versus the other two in terms of capability and just the general user experience?
So in terms of user experience, again, it really depends. So user experience depends in terms of, which market you are operating first. So I think Swiggy, Instamart, that way has got a very strong recall in Bangalore. Because that is where the side of the South market, they are dominant. Blinkit is dominant in the North market. Right? Again, I'm not saying that this cannot be replicated. Blinkit can also come and disrupt Instamart in South. But so far, Instamart is doing very well and is a market leader as far as South is concerned. So as I said, the competitive advantage these quick commerce players have is the micro markets they are operating in, is the data, the intelligence, the consumption patterns they have built and enhanced over time. It actually gets enriched every 6 months to a year when you try to review the data. So I think that is the advantage these players have in terms of which markets they operate. And the true winners in this space will actually be the ones who disrupt in the new markets. So tomorrow if a Blinkit becomes a market in a Bangalore city, that is something to watch out for. How they do it that is again very complicated because, I mean, let's say there are 3-4 ways in terms of how you can compete with each other, right? One is, of course, the location of the store. That is relatively easier. You just open a store next to the Instamart store.
Yeah.
You can do that. Second, very crucial and very important factor is the assortment and the customer data. So what assortment, what customer data and Instamart will have, Blinkit should have the intelligence, to cater to that set of customers and understand customer behavior. That is what will differentiate these players. So it is all about data, monetization, the big data management, whether you got advertising revenue from brands or driving traffic on your app. Because eventually, 10 minutes delivery everyone will do. Dark store, their same place everyone will have.
Yeah.
What differentiates the players is the data and the customer intelligence.
Yeah. And if we look at the logistics side of this, because obviously that is such a large component, can you talk to me about, I don't know what kind of metrics Swiggy reveals on this front, but for example, if they make a dark store in a particular location, what is the kind of radius they can serve with that? What is the size of the store they need? How many SKUs do they have in it? Do we have any data on any of that?
So in terms of data, companies do give out indicative data. So in terms of radius, generally what they target is 2 to 4 kilometers.
Okay.
In terms of 2 to 5 kilometers in terms of radius, because that will lead to a good user experience. Of course, you can have stores which cater to even up to 8 to 9 kilometers. But over there, the experience gets hampered because you cannot deliver within 10 to 15 minutes. Your lead times kind of tend to go higher. As far as store sizes are concerned, I think the store sizes are more, it depends. Like, for example, now they're trying to increase the store size, but generally the store sizes vary in the range of 3 to 5,000 square feet in that range. But again, the store location is not the main area. It could be in a garage, it could be in somewhere, because you actually don't have customers coming to the store, right? And you don't need to invest much in terms of infra in the stores, because it's just the delivery partners who will come and collect the stuff. The third thing you asked about assortments. Now, assortments, as I said, is very limited. Assortments can vary between 20 to 30,000 in terms of number of SKUs or products, right? And as I said, it is all about intelligence. How much assortments, how many varieties, or how many pieces of that particular SKU you want to have. Because this is something which is 75-80% led by grocery and FMCG and staples category, which is perishable in nature as well, right?
Yeah.
So you can have a lot of dead stock, a lot of spoilage as well. But as I said, because these are platforms, because they can understand consumer behavior, they are somehow able to execute well on that.
And can you explain to me why Swiggy has chosen not to separate out Instamart as a separate app in the way Zomato has done with Blinkit, and why they've chosen to keep it within the larger Swiggy app itself?
So I think both these things are different in its own manner. So Zomato keeping the app separately is something good, again, I would say, because eventually you're not, kind of confusing the customer, in terms of the various offerings that you have. You have the opportunity to monetize two apps. So when you talk about ad revenue, when you talk about traffic, you will obviously have overlap, but you may have a larger customer base for the quick commerce app than the food business app in the next 3 to 5 years. Right? Just giving the opportunity in terms of the entire strategic reason in terms of why they're doing this. You can monetize two apps, and you have a double advantage here to yourself. On the other hand, what Swiggy is doing is a super app kind of a thing, wherein everything is bundled under one single app. Now, that also has its own set of advantages, because eventually, if the customer wants convenience, they don't need to download too many apps on your phone. Just one app will give you everything. And today, we know how the market is so cluttered, right? People don't want too many apps on their phone. So that works for a certain set of customers. And second, of course, you can build a much larger customer base. Right. Obviously, again, there will be overlaps. Okay. But the point is, you can have a customer base at a respectable scale because you're doing multiple offerings.
Yeah.
Plus, your time spent on the app goes up, which means your monetization on ad revenue can also kind of increase basis that. So both these things have their own strategic advantages. Of course, which one plays out better, that only time will tell, because things are just picking up in a market like India. There are certain businesses wherein people would want separate apps for separate things, right? They don't want everything clubbed under one umbrella. So each of them has its own strategic advantage.
What has been sort of spoken about as the next major frontier for Swiggy is expansion beyond the major cities. What do you think is the correct way to think about that? as far as the economics of the business goes for Swiggy, do you think the opportunity is going to be eventually as lucrative as some people think? How do you think about that entire broader expansion into tier 2, tier 3 cities?
See, as far as the success that we've seen today in the metro markets for the quick commerce business, it's been beyond expectations. Over the last 2 to 3 years, I think the number of stores, the GOV growth, the kind of unit economics, the kind of profitability, the breaking point, it's been phenomenally well, right? It's worked extremely well for the urban metro audience, the top 10 cities which are there. Can this success be replicated in non-metro markets? I would still say the answer is uncertain as of now. Okay. Second thing is that, can they ever have this kind of a success? Yes, of course they can have. But the only thing is, it will take more time as compared to what is the time taken over here. I'll just give you 2-3 reasons in terms of why that is the case here. In the case of metros, people don't have too much of time, right? People are impulsive. People are very busy, on the move. Things are very fast in metro markets. So that is why they want this, this convenience-led thing and the anti-impulse behavior which is there. Metros, people live in smaller houses. There are a lot of storage issues. They would not want to actually, put bulk purchases, and they would want to have it fresh and top up, all those kind of things. Second thing, metros, people live in nuclear families, right? So that also kind of, hampers them, wherein there is no dependency in terms of who goes and gets the stuff, and they're all dependent in terms of their own way. Everything is very busy over here. Traffic is an issue, logistics, lead time, high rise, building towers, all these kind of things. So, and the woman and the man both are generally working in a metro market. So these 4-5 demographic factors have worked very favorably for quick commerce business in metro markets. Right? If you go to non-metro markets, completely the opposite. Whether you call it the working woman, whether you call it the time, the busyness, whether you call it high rise, nothing of this sort is there in the non-metro markets, completely absent. And again, what's worked in the metro markets is the grocery staple business, not everything. So, we believe that, apparel as a category may not do well on quick commerce, because apparel, you want to actually search the product, try the product, see more variety. Is doing well online. That's no problem. But the point is, will somebody want a shirt on an impulsive basis every time? The answer is no, right? Sometimes it's okay, but not every time. Maybe a rare moment, the person would want it based on emergency. So the point is that in the non-metro market, this is one factor, the demographic factor. Second very big factor in the non-metro market is also the penetration of the kirana stores, right? So we have got about 14-15 million grocery kirana stores in India today, right? 70% of these stores are located in the non-metro market, right? Which means that just below your house or building, you are bound to find a kirana store by hook or by crook in the non-metro markets. So the idea is that, will that customer order the product online if you can get it down, right? Unless you're giving a steep discount. But again, those things might happen, but eventually the business has to be about moving away from discounts. It has to be a sustainable business with proper unit economics and proper profitability. So I think that way, because of these two reasons, demographic and the higher kirana penetration, the non-metro markets will take some time. Now, what can work in favor of non-metro markets? 2 points that can work in their favor. One is assortments. So there are certain assortments which are aspirational in nature, whether it could be a Diet Coke or whether it could be a ginger ale, which is not available at that local kirana store in the non-metro market, or an imported chocolate or imported packet of chips, right? Or a D2C brand, personal care D2C brand. Those are things where the non-metro market will do extremely well, because those are products which are not available to the normal kirana store, and then they will want to order it online. That's the first way. The second aspect in terms of how non-metro market can work favorably for quick commerce platforms is the category split. So what happens in the case of non-metro is that you basically have got malls and branded outlets which are maybe half an hour, 1 hour distance from your house, right? So let's say if somebody wants to buy a pair of Nike shoes, right? If quick commerce is providing you that on an impulse basis, you will basically move to that. Or maybe a t-shirt, right? Which is, so I would not want to spend 1 hour on traveling to a mall and getting it. So I'm going to call from quick commerce restaurant. So these two aspects or these two angles, the quick commerce can get some bit of success. But in terms of frequency, calling it so frequently and, every monthly my groceries coming from quick commerce, 40-30% of my top-up groceries coming from quick commerce, those things may not happen in an urgent manner. It will obviously happen 5 years down the line when things eventually become, like for example, Urbanization. Whenever you see urbanization in the non-metro markets, some markets like Nasik, all the other cities, Nagpur, they come up eventually, and those demographic behavior does change over there as well. So that is something very different, right? Now, in the case of food business, why food became a success faster in non-metro markets and why quick commerce will not? Because in the case of food business, it's pure convenience. I don't want to go to the restaurant to eat. I want to eat the food at my home. What do? I will order the food, right? I don't have a restaurant below my house. I have to travel to the restaurant. So I'm going to order my food. In the case of quick commerce, that is not there. I have the kirana store below my house. Why do I need to order it?
Yeah.
So then I'm going to play on assortments. I'm going to play on categories.
The thing that I've not understood, and specifically I'm saying as far as fashion on quick commerce is concerned, is a major part of any fashion, whether it's clothes, shoes, or whatever, is return management, right? Because often what happens is if I'm buying a pair of shoes, I'll buy 2 sizes. I'm not saying I do it, but people do it, that you buy 2 sizes and then you try both and then return the one that it doesn't fit as well. On an Amazon, Flipkart, e-commerce platform, I understand how that works. In a quick commerce setting, that process will essentially prohibit any of the platforms from actually making it a viable business.
Correct.
So therefore, how does fashion, which many people believe is the next big thing for quick commerce, how does fashion viably scale on quick commerce as far as Swiggy is concerned?
I think fashion as a category is not meant for quick commerce. I don't think it will scale up for an Instamart, right? The reason for that is very clear. As I said, fashion, you need to be very selective in terms of what you are purchasing, right? And look at the categories that have done well on Instamart or quick commerce as a business proposition. The grocery category, where the returns are lowest, right? Because whenever a consumer wants a packet of chips or a soda bottle or, a soft drink, generally they don't tend to return it, right? Returns are lowest, single digit returns. Second category, which is really picked up well on quick commerce, is the beauty and personal care vertical. Again, therein the returns are, 5 to 8%. Reason being, the consumer knows in terms of what cream or, what soap or what exactly thing they want. In the case of apparel, in the case of footwear, in the case of many of these categories, the returns are as high as 30 to 35% on e-commerce platforms. So I think the categories where returns are lower are the ones which will do well on quick commerce. Let's take the example of medicine category, right? Wellness, pharmacy, that will do very well on quick commerce because one is impulsive in nature and you know what medicine you want, right? You're not going to return it. So fashion as a segment will be there in quick commerce, but quick commerce will not be able to disrupt what e-commerce is doing in the fashion segment.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll see other categories also, like for example, pet care, something to do with children, something to do with toys, gifting, accessories, general home stuff. These are categories which will see traction on quick commerce, apart from FMCG and PPC, which have got a proven success model as of now. But not the likes of white goods, not the likes of apparel.
Is it really essentially the more standardized a product is, the better it will do on quick commerce?
Yes, absolutely. So as I said, you are basically sure in terms of what you want and you want to order for that. And as you rightly said, the reverse logistics economics are very poor as far as quick commerce is concerned.
Yeah.
Because once you get into reverse logistics, once you get into returns, I think you'll have to really test the economics of this business. So which is why the platforms like Instamart and others also very sure that which category they want to focus, which category they want to get into, so that they're able to maximize ROI.
Right. I was thinking about how I was imagining, suppose I was in charge of Swiggy, and in this case, more specifically on Instamart, what are the ways in which I can, in effect, influence the customer, the user, to increase his average order value? And one obvious thing that I feel is that if they keep increasing the minimum amount that you have to order for free delivery, as in value-wise, I know that if I think right now it's $149 or $199. If tomorrow they made it $399, I will just order that much more to make sure I get $399, so I don't have to pay for delivery. So that is one obvious thing that I can think of. But what do you think Swiggy can do to increase average order values and therefore significantly enhance its own unit economics?
So two things here. If you look at Instamart's average order value, it is around 25-30% lower as compared to Blinkit's average order value, right? So obviously assortments has a play here.
Sorry, why is that?
Two reasons for that.
Huh.
One very big reason is the assortments.
Okay.
Right. So the kind of assortments you'll have, you will basically have more premium products, more high value products, more premium brands into your platform as compared to, what the other peers are having. And second is the customer cohort. Right. So for example, in markets like Delhi NCR region, consumers actually, order that high value products because they can afford it. Affordability of the customer. These are two factors which define your average order value, right? Now to your question in terms of how do I increase average order value, obviously one metric is this, wherein you kind of make free delivery free only at 400 rupees. But I think that will somewhere impact your order volumes, right? Because this business right now is just taking off. I don't think that we should increase the free delivery capping from 199 to 499, 399 so soon, because there's still ample scope for penetration. There's a lot of happening, fragmentation, fierce competition in the market. That is still too soon to do that. I think we'd rather have high value items on the platform. So whether it could be a PlayStation or a gold coin, I know these are very niche in nature, but the point is, some way or the other, those are ways to enhance your order value. So whether you could have premium products, B2C brands which are more expensive or more premium in nature, right? So these are ways to enhance your average order value. Just change the assortments as compared to what your premium customer would demand, and basically move the premium way. So that's why I'm saying quick commerce is a very diverse business. So, eventually you can say that, let's say 5 years down the line, you might have one quick commerce platform which is solely focused for the masses brands.
Okay.
And one quick commerce platform which is solely focused on the focus. I don't say they are catering everything, but they are a master in premium brands, master in, mass brands. So anything could happen. So this business is just evolving right now. And
You mean a sort of Amazon versus Meesho type of situation?
yeah, like Amazon versus a Flipkart, right? I mean, what did Flipkart do today? Why is Flipkart market share higher versus Amazon, right? Because of the sole reason that they went to non-metro market aggressively. They changed their assortment completely. Their assortments are more localized, more SME, more affordable in nature as compared to what Amazon is giving today.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you will have a similar play in quick commerce as well. But removing this capping or increasing this capping, I don't think is right to do as of now.
Interesting. But tell me something, are people in any, in aggregate, in a meaningful sense, buying PlayStations and, paying 50,000 rupees on a quick commerce order? Is that really in a meaningful way happening?
It's not happening in a meaningful manner, but the point is that it somehow gives a fillip to your order value. That's one thing. And second, there are many categories. Like for example, the mobile accessory category, that is huge. And that is impulse buying in nature. Again, it can enhance order value to a very big manner, like mobile covers, chargers, accessories. Consumers want this on impulse basis. So you have to bet on categories which are more premium, more high value in nature, and can enhance AOV as well, when you can limit discounting too.
Yeah. And one thing that in my view has, so I use Swiggy. I have Zomato and Swiggy. And I think a major reason why I basically just use Swiggy is I've paid for that Swiggy One membership. So therefore, naturally, that's the first port of call when I want to order something. How do you think that loyalty program has influenced the business? And do you think they need to somehow find a way to enhance that program to increase customer stickiness and make that program its advantage in some ways in the way Amazon has made Prime its advantage?
So as you said, the earlier question that you asked in terms of why Swiggy is better versus Zomato, Swiggy has got a one single super app. This is the advantage, right? So this is typically like an Amazon Prime, right? A customer who is on Zomato Gold versus a customer who's on Swiggy One. The Swiggy One customer will be more sticky and more loyal in nature because he's getting multiple things under one umbrella. The Instamart service, the Genie service, some preferential treatment in the food service, in the ticketing service, just in case. So I think this is how Swiggy might be able to execute better as compared to Zomato, because they've got just one single membership where you pay a certain amount for a loyalty program and you enjoy the benefits of it. So I think the entire business today is about loyalty, is about customer stickiness, because to get a new customer, you have to spend a lot on customer acquisition. And now the customer acquisition cost in the food business would have come down because it's become duopoly in nature. But in the quick commerce business, the customer acquisition is only going to increase from here on because you're seeing so much of fierce competition. Look at the likes of Zepto, what they are doing. I mean, they are burning, close to about 500, 600 crores on a monthly basis in terms of the quick commerce business. So very clearly this is as per media reports basically. But the point is that things are going to become more complicated as we go ahead in the quick commerce business. And, you have to kind of identify your moat and protect your customer and make sure the experience is enhanced in the best possible manner. Because it just takes one bad experience for a customer to move away from the app. So I think that is what Swiggy Instamart has to protect.
Yeah. I find if I compare Swiggy, Instamart, Zomato, Blinkit, and Zepto, I'm comparing the founders now, or who we see as the faces of the companies. It's very interesting. You have Zepto, where the two founders, you see them in interviews and generally, of course, as far as the business is concerned. Then you have Dipinder Goyal of Zomato, where forget the business, Vito, I mean, he's coming on the Kapil Sharma show, and his personal life is also public information. But then somehow I look at the Swiggy founders. Honestly, until the IPO, I don't think I'd ever seen their faces. I had no idea what their names were, who they were, what they looked like. Is there anything we can glean from that difference in, public appearances, persona, so on? Is that at all relevant, do you think, to these businesses? Do you think there is anything that reticence from public appearances tells us about the founders?
It does. I think it does have a positive impact in terms of your brand value, right? The brand event, basically people talk more about the brand. So we saw Shark Tank, right? We've seen Boat, Mama. I mean, we've seen the founders of all these brands come on these kind of shows. What has happened is that people talk about the brand. It becomes conversational. So, people are conversing more about the brand, the founder, where he appeared, what he appeared. So, net in terms of execution or in terms of business or strategic or financial, it will not matter much. It is more of a PR activity.
Right.
But you do have more conversations about the brand on social media, LinkedIn or Instagram kind of platforms, which is in a way a positive and a good thing. They never work against you, basically. So, for example, if more people know, a founder of Zomato versus a founder of Swiggy, it will only work in favor of Zomato, not against them. So I think it's a good thing to do. And I think after the IPO, the Swiggy founders have also become very proactive in these kind of things.
I mentioned earlier that other than food delivery and quick commerce, there's also other smaller businesses within Swiggy. Do you think those other businesses, which is Genie and now Scenes and things like that they are unnecessary distractions at this point? Or do you think that even if they're not necessarily scaling or, adding to the bottom line, they are necessary in order to have that larger business?
I don't think they are necessary. It's not a compulsion. I think they can do without these two businesses as well, the Genie and the Scenes. But I think we're in the mode of experimentation. All these companies are cash rich. They've got more than $1 billion on their books today, sitting in terms of cash. And eventually, if they experiment into 4 or 5 set of businesses with very small amounts of, few hundred crores, even if one business picks up, it can do wonders for them. That's the first thing. So the reason why they're doing this is because there's ample amount of cash. It's like, they've been there, done that. They know how a platform business work. So instead of selling food, you're selling grocery. Instead of selling grocery, you're selling tickets, or you're delivering a courier. It doesn't matter. The platform, you know how to run the platform. You have the data, you have the technology, you have the last mile. You have all these things in place, right? So that is why they take these kind of bets, because eventually, even if something clicks, it can work immensely in their favor. And let's say if things don't work out, I think, the risk is very low given the kind of size and scale they operate. Second very big advantage is the customer base. As I mentioned earlier as well, they have got the Gen Z customer. So they will try to focus on business segments which are, kind of appealing more to the Gen Z.
Right.
Okay, because the Gen Z want convenience. Now, what is this service of Genie? It is convenience, right? I don't want to go and give something somewhere, so I'll book a courier. It is convenience. So any business which tests the case of having a Gen Z customer who wants convenience would make an absolute sense for these platforms to move into.
But it's fascinating because, I'm saying you go back, say, 5 years. I don't know how many people were really thinking of quick commerce as a large part of their business. And today it's probably the most important vertical. What I'm trying to understand is, how do we think about Swiggy as a business overall over the next 3, 5, 10 years even? How does this company evolve? Does it eventually just become this massive quick commerce business where food and other things are smaller components? Or what is your best guess of what the future holds for Swiggy?
So I think in terms of the present moment, if you see almost about 65 to 70% of the GOV does come from the food business. Okay, that is the larger business, even revenue rather, right? And quick commerce is in 30s, 30, 35 odd percent, and the balance 4-5% is a niche business which are there. But given the kind of growth rates food business is seeing today, I think we'll see a drastic shift towards other businesses share increasing faster. So maybe in the next 5 years, you can actually say that quick commerce and the food business are evenly split in terms of contribution, right? And the other businesses also on this base of 3 to 4% of GOV or revenue kind of double up, because even those businesses at that scale are growing exponentially higher as compared to even the quick commerce business for that matter. So I think still very early days, but yes, they can be an internet conglomerate. We're having an even spread in quick commerce and the food business, and the other businesses, also doubling up in terms of share. That is how I see it. But yes, the food business contribution is bound to come down the next 5 years, given the kind of gap in growth rates that we are seeing for food versus quick commerce.
The constant criticism of these companies has been that essentially there's just endless cash burn, and if tomorrow morning they turned off that tap, suddenly the business would not be nearly as good as it seems today. At what point can we say, do we have a specific number as far as scale of business is concerned, where we can say, okay, at this point of, say, revenue, Swiggy genuinely becomes this massive cash generating machine?
See, this cash burn thing has always been very controversial, and it's always been, people have got their own apprehensions, own preconceived notions in terms of whether quick commerce can sustain or not. I'll just give you a very correct answer there, very blunt one. Had quick commerce business not been sustainable, you wouldn't have seen the likes of Blinkit having a break-even point today at this scale. Right? They are operating more than somewhat 1,000 odd stores today, right? They're largely at the break-even point. Instamart obviously is making losses because they're the second or third player. So that is okay. But the market leader has kind of proved it that this business is sustainable. This business has got economic sense. Right? Forget that. If you ask any of these companies, Instamart or a Blinkit, if you ask them in terms of what the mature stores are doing in terms of profitability, they're at a reasonably good level in terms of profitability. The reason why they're bleeding right now, which is just the last 3 to 6 months where losses for all these companies have increased exponentially, two reasons. One is because they're expanding aggressively. As I said, this business opportunity is huge. You have to go to new markets, you have to experiment, and there you need investments in terms of, promotions and, awareness, everything, and plus the capex, everything put together, assortment, everything put together. The second reason is the increased competitive intensity. So because competition is increased, because the competition is giving discounts, entering into some sort of a mild price war, the existing players are also doing that. So I think 3 to 4 years down the line, all these notions will be proven wrong, because I believe quick commerce as a business model is very much here to stay and has a very bright future. And to your question in terms of at what scale, I think the scale will be dependent in terms of when the fragmentation stops or when we start seeing early signs of consolidation. I mean, today it's very tough to call out a number and say at, so many $1 billion of revenue, Swiggy will do well or unit economics are tested. That can't be the case. I think the fragmentation has to kind of cool off. Consolidation has to happen. Success in non-metro has to happen. Okay, these are two very big factors. So for example, let's say if Instamart is operating at 2,500, 3,000 stores, let's say 5 years down the line, hypothetically there are 3,000 stores, which is present in non-metro also in a reasonable manner, because today non-metro is not more than 5-10%, right? In terms of the split, top 12 cities are larger ones. And we are also seeing a situation wherein consolidation has happened, right? That is when the real profitability of the business will come out. And as I say, I think margins in the quick commerce business can actually be more superior as versus the margins in the food tech business. Right? Or any other modern trade business. You take the like of DMart, any modern trade player, they make EBITDA margins of not more than 8-10%, single digit, because they play on value and pricing and all these things, the lowest price. They have only one lever, which is basically getting margins from the brand. In the case of quick commerce, you have multiple levers. One is from the brand, you have got higher margins because you have exponential variety of brands. I mean, D2C brands are today paying 35-40% to the quick commerce platform just because they want to enter and want to sell their product on quick commerce. That's the kind of desperation they have. That's the first thing. You can charge the customers. You can charge them platform fee, delivery fee, and that's another big margin lever.
Yeah.
Third, the biggest margin lever is ad revenue for all these platforms. Look at Amazon US. 80-90% of their EBITDA is driven by ad revenue. So the point I'm trying to make is that when people talk about quick commerce and business not being sustainable, unit economics tested, whether business is sustain or sustain, I'm a firm believer the future is very bright. Only in the near term you will see competition, you will see all these things for the next 3-4 years. But once things come steady, the margins will be very rich for this business.
That was actually a really interesting point, comparing Swiggy or say quick commerce more generally with modern trade, general trade. Everybody is busy comparing Swiggy and Blinkit and Zepto and whoever else is in that space. But do you think that is actually a secondary discussion? In some sense, the real loser in all of this is going to be that offline channel that is unable to compete with quick commerce companies like Instamart?
Let's look at the market, right? For any FMCG brand, about 10 to 12% of their sales comes from e-commerce, including quick commerce.
Okay.
Around 15-20% comes from modern trade, and the balance 70-25%, which is a lion's share, comes from the Kirana stores. I think the bigger loser here will be Kirana stores.
Okay.
And not modern trade. I think modern trade will still sustain because they are very small in terms of contribution. They still have ample opportunity to penetrate in terms of number of stores. So they may not grow exponentially the way quick commerce and e-commerce is growing, but yes, they will be able to sustain. Growth rates will converge from them. So for a 25% growth rate for a DMart, it might come to 18%, 90%. That will be the new normal, but they will sustain. The bigger losers who will see a decline or maybe a shutdown in terms of stores or lower margins or real pricing pressure will be the Kirana stores. I think they will see a bigger negative impact of this entire quick commerce rush that we're seeing.
You mentioned these massive cash piles companies like Swiggy have. But do you think that until they hit that point that you mentioned where the unit economics suddenly become very attractive, that they are on this sort of treadmill where they have to fairly regularly raise capital? And how does, assuming that that is the case, how should a shareholder or potential shareholder view that? And should they see that as a challenge, at least for the foreseeable future?
So let's take the example of the food business, right? Let's say today Swiggy was only operating the food business. Their EBITDA as a percentage of GOV is about between the range of 2 to 4.5% in that range, which means that the actual EBITDA margins are, mid-teens or low teens, right? Had these been standalone food businesses, they would have also started to pay dividends to the investors today.
Right.
Because there's not much to do there in the food business in terms of initial investment, incrementally there's not much to do over there. Opportunities, growth is limited, right? But because they're doing other businesses, they are still making losses, they're still in the investment mode. So let's say 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, everything kind of cools off. Quick commerce, as you say, reaches a respectable scale, reaches respectable margins. I think investors will be paid dividends again. But the point is, why would you want that safety haven of dividend from platform companies? Platform companies means what? They are bound to break all records as far as growth is concerned. They are bound to chase growth. They have their DNA. You want your money to grow faster, right? So I don't think investors of these companies are actually looking for dividends. I think investors of these companies are actually chasing very strong growth. The only thing to monitor is profitability. Okay, so whether valuations will sustain at this level today or improve will depend in terms of how profitability comes into these businesses. So food is like a concept which is tried and tested, known concept. They've got the success there. If quick commerce is able to prove that similar level of success, then valuations will see re-rating from here on as well. Quick commerce today does need money in terms of investments, whether it could be inventory or whether it could be capex expansion or marketing or customer acquisition. But 5 years down the line, once the consolidation happens, you may not need that kind of money. So dilution will also stop after that.
Karan, I think we can go on all day. It's just such a fascinating space, fascinating company. And like I said, I was really excited to do this for the simple reason that I think it's remarkable to me that in such a short period of time, a company has gone from being completely unheard of to becoming so crucial just to my day-to-day life, where I feel like it's become, I don't know how I operate anymore without it. I can't imagine a situation where I can't just click a few buttons and get stuff delivered to my house. But thank you so much for taking the time explaining Swiggy, the competitive dynamics within the industry and how Swiggy has positioned itself. It was really fascinating listening to all that. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Krish. It was a pleasure to be here. And indeed had a candid conversation, sharing all my views across all these sectors. And let's hope that quick commerce really becomes large and comes at a respectable, profitable level for all investors to get confidence.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karan. Thank you.